morning, everyone. Happy to see you all here. Today, I'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Jaume Piera. Dr. Piera is a research group leader of environmental and sustainability participatory information systems at the Department of Physical and Technological Oceanography at the Institute of Marine Sciences. Today's talk is part of EU Green Weeks, but also Road to COP17 that's happening in Armenia next year. And Dr. Piera's visit here has been supported by the Spanish Embassy. Together we work on a common European project, Horizon Europe project called CS Mach 1, which is to develop the network of, the data network of marine citizen science. But Jaume also has a very long experience in participatory science, citizen science, and data management. And today he's going to share some of his wisdom with us with regards to what it takes to organize large events. In Spain, I know they organize long biomarathons, engaging hundreds, if not thousands of people. So he will be presenting to us some of their experiences, lessons learned, best practices. And then following this presentation, we're going to have a discussion in the room. I would be happy if everybody contributed. That would maybe help us plan forward towards the COP in Armenia next year. That said, I'll give the floor to Jaume.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Good morning, everyone. So basically, as Gareth was mentioned, we will try to discuss how to organize large-scale events. But before that, I would like a little bit to frame the reason why we try to do. It's quite an effort to create such a kind of event. So let's put a little bit on context the need of such a kind of events, organizations. So, well, basically, it was not long ago that we had the COVID, and I suppose it was a kind of shock, social shock, I suppose in Armenia, obviously in all the world. But it seems that people are a little bit forgetting the problem that it causes, and we are expecting, unfortunately, many other types of challenges, socio-ecological challenges in the future. And just to try to remember a little bit what happened during the COVID, one of the main problems was, that what we learned from the pandemic is that the society is complex. The reactions in front of how to solve or how to address that problem was very different. Many people were against vaccines, for example. People say that it was a kind of social control. Meanwhile, all other people thought it was clearly the need on having vaccine solutions. Also, I think that there was a lot of a little bit of pressure to the scientists asking for solutions. Guys, what we have to do? You are the ones that you know what to do, and honestly, I think that it was one of the reasons that some people started thinking that science maybe matters more than it was expected in the past. So, thinking on the new waves, the main problem could be, for example, as you know, and probably it will be discussed a little bit in COP, the biodiversity loss, how to change these trends that it seems, for example, in the gray, if you do not do anything about any action, probably we'll lose more and more biodiversity. And there is a medium term, it's that one in orange, that is increased conservation actions, but the other in green is completely change our style of life. And obviously this could be really controversial. The same happened with, the greenhouse gases. Stopping the greenhouse gases means to change completely or significantly our way of living, and not everybody is agree on that. As you know, the controversy on such a kind of challenges are also as well. How to address this? Well, one of the proposals is try to focus more and more on evidence-based policies. The idea is, to take decisions, but based mainly on scientific knowledge on that. But how can we achieve such a kind of method or policies based on evidence-based? It's one of the major themes or major topics in our group. It's if we think in this pyramid, going from data to fully comprehension, you can see that at the comprehension level is when there are the decision-making actions. But in our case, in our group, we are very much focused on this idea that how to obtain data to get the proper information to scale up to knowledge and finally comprehension. And basically we end up with the need of having much more data than we are collecting until now. And there are basically two major approaches on that. One of the approaches could be, investing in more sophisticated technologies, more advanced remote sensing sensors, autonomous drones or whatever you want. But the other is, if we need more data everywhere and all the time, why not to engage people? Because people are everywhere all the time, doing their own jobs, sometimes doing their own hobbies, whatever, but they are potentially very much a very interesting source of information. And from that, and just to mention that there is not, this is basically the idea of citizen science. And there is not a single citizen science. If we think in terms of conventional, usually whenever we need to explore a territory, basically we decide to select certain stations and try to put all the effort on such a kind of stations. The completely, I would say, case or the extreme case is what we call sometimes unstructured data. Is try to engage as many people as possible, no matter if they are trained or not trained, but try to covering all the territory. And in between, it's what is called sometimes structured data. It's basically try to train citizens becoming a kind of scientist, and then they help, I would say, on those green spaces. So you can see that there are several questions in between. I will try to explain you a little bit why, because we for us it's very important to go to unstructured citizen science data, and I will try to justify a bit why. Because one of the problems, if you can see, is that the accuracy of the data will decrease. Obviously, the more people are involved, the more people, and particularly those that are not trained, probably they will not produce the data with the accuracy that can be produced by experts on the field. To do so, I will review a little bit, very short, some of the original models. Probably, I hope that you are more or less familiar with Locke and Volterra. There were two mathematicians at the beginning of the century that they started thinking on how to express the relationship between prey and predators. And they designed, I would say, a relatively simple mathematical formula. I will not go in detail on that, but basically part of the solutions is that they found that the population should oscillate or could oscillate. No? There could be different oscillation types between the prey and the predators, obviously depending on the parameters of such a kind of mathematic formulation. But there was a lot of controversy on that, because many people say this type of model is too simple. If you are only thinking on one predator and one prey, on reality, and I put you an example, there are several predators that are also preys from other predators, and the same predator preys to a different prey. So many people say, okay, from, I would say, academic point of view, it's nice to have it as a kind of exercise, but this type of models, they never will produce meaningful results to be used in a I would say, in field context or in applied context. There was quite a lot of controversy on that, but there was one finding in the end of the 60s. There was one ecologist, he found this time series, and this time series is particularly interesting. It's basically the production of the furs, how many furs were, commercialized in this area. You can see it's half of Canada, basically it's 6 times the Peninsula Iberica, and it was this Hudson Bay company. He has the rights to commercialize the furs, commercializing with indigenous people or hunters. You can imagine the number of hunters involved on that, and you can see here it's thousands of furs. So we are talking a lot of furs. But just if you want, 2 types of furs, hares and predator, the lynx, and I will focus on the lynx, only on the lynx. You can see 90 years of data. It's quite rare that we have 90 years of data in, I would say, in academic, I would say, framework. But you can.
Each fur represents one.
No, thousands of furs.
Each fur.
Yes. So the idea, you can see that the peaks are more or less every 10 years for 90 years. So it seems that it demonstrates that really that population was oscillating. The reason why it was oscillating at more or less 10 years and not 15 and not 17, and why not? It's not fully understood. But at least what we can demonstrate that it's a real scenario that the populations can oscillate. And I put you a couple of examples that it could be one of the extraction of the conclusions we can take if we narrow our view in, I would say, 6 years, for example, in a window of 6 years, which is even, I guess, bigger than or longer than the usually common projects. So you can see during these 6 years, you say, oh, that links will disappear because it's going down, very fast, and you can see it's quite linear, and many of us would like having such a kind of linear regression sheet with this coefficient on some of our results. And you can see that the following 6 years, it's completely the opposite, because it's oscillating. But for me, what is more important is that this data comes from hunters. And obviously hunters, they never agree on the method of hunting. They do whatever they could. And in some cases, there could be very expertise hunters. In the others, would be very young ones. In some cases, there could be fires in some areas. I don't know, any kind of local issue you want to. But because it was such a big extension and so many, I would say, people involved on that, despite the fact it was completely unstructured, there were no conventions, no workshops on how to hunt, and we get a very significant result. I think for me it was very interesting result in terms that, okay, at least in some cases, I wouldn't say that it's a general, but at least in some cases, we are expecting oscillation. Maybe now my big question is why 10 years and why not 11 or 15? And it seems I haven't seen that. I'm searching that some anthropologists mentioned that indigenous people knew that for 300 years. So it seems that 300 years before, they really knew that from sometimes there were good periods for hunting, bad periods for hunting. So these are, I think, one of these good examples that structural data could be so meaningful. The other that I want to show you, it's something that it happened at least in Japan. It was a kind of tradition, it's to go out just to see the flowering. It's called hanami. And you can see it's so important that they have a kind of forecast every year, in the newspapers they produce, because as you know, the latitude is very different from the north to the south, from Hokkaido to Kyushu, and you can see these lines is basically the expected peak of the flower. So people know more or less when there will be the peak of the flower, and they go to see that blossom in that particular area. And this researcher, Dr. Aono, he collected all the data he could find. But you can see here that some of the data he took, it was from poems. So you can see it was plenty of unstructured data. So you may think that it's quite noisy, but applying very simple statistics, moving average, what you can see is at the end, it goes down. And that means that the flowers becoming to appear, the blossom, it's every time sooner and sooner. So you can see for nearly 1,000 years, it was between 10 and 20th of April. But at the very end, you can see that it drops. So that means that obviously we could think in terms of global warming. The problem is that the earth is warmer, and the flower, the blossom, it started even in some cases just at the beginning of April. Again, you can see that it was a completely, unstructured data. And this is a kind of data that we think it could be very interesting. Even he was able to try to predict the mean value of the temperature in March using that type of data. And you can see the prediction and the actual temperature measured by, I would say, official temperature sensors. So it was quite good, the model at the end. So you can see that these are two examples. One, imagine, more than 1,000 years of data record, the other 90 years. And also I want to put you, this was one example that we did. We studied the data from insects in Jebif in the Peninsula Iberica. And we split it, the one that comes from academic sources and the one that comes from citizen science, mostly of them unstructured data. And you can see that if we need to apply or to try to study the status of the insects in the Peninsula Iberica, it seems that at least the spatial coverage is much better in the case of citizens than in the case of academics. Because obviously in the academics you work in some place and you work mostly, or you put your effort usually around the place where you live or where you work. And so there are some important spatial gaps in the center. So again, we think that this is a kind of source that at least covers part of the, I would say, challenges in terms of spatial and temporal gaps. In fact, I can tell you, this is how it goes, you know, the replacement of the sources of GBIF. GBIF is one of the biggest data aggregators of biodiversity. And you can see the changes during the last 20 years, so 25 years, how participatory monitoring is skyrocketing, is increasing exponentially, while the other sources, and these sources means museums, universities, any kind of academic institution providing biodiversity data, the ratio, it's extremely now much higher from the citizen science component. So citizen science data is becoming, you know, one of the major sources to report or to get biodiversity data. So basically, if you want, we think that for this reason, we need to design citizen observatories that are adapted to the needs that we want in terms of data quality and knowledge attribution, whatever you want. So we need to go to that, and that's basically our purpose or our main topic in our research group. Just to keep in mind that now research infrastructure are considered one of the pillars of excellence in the European programs. That's the Horizon Europe. And you can see one of the pillars is research infrastructure, and sometimes it's widening participatory, that means collaboration between different countries and organizations. So basically, that's why we developed MINCA. MINCA is our proposal, the Citizen Observatory we coordinate. It's more or less inspired in iNaturalist because we thought that it was a very good one. If you want, during the table discussions, many people ask why you change or why you split from something that it was well, I would say, structured and with a large community. But I think it's something that we can discuss later if you want. These are the people behind MINCA. And you can see that there are many people, and some people addressing governance, knowledge, and others engagement, and others data curations, volunteer participation. So we have many different skills within the team. And we mentioned MINCA. MINCA means basically collective work in favor of the community. MINCA is a Quechua name, a Quechua term, that basically is a pre-Columbian tradition. And I will say, if I'm in the village and I need to build a new house, we can organize a MINCA, all the people from the village, and they help me to build my house, and I can do the same for the rest of the people, you know, and in any other type of need on the community. And this feeling, we thought it was very, the conception, if you want, the vision, it was very much in line that we want to do. As you can see, we mentioned the MINCA. The URL is MINCA/SDG, and because we want to address in the future other type of indicators related to different sustainable development goals. Now we are very much focused on biodiversity, and that's why we're focused basically on SDG 14 and 15, that are the ones related to terrestrial and aquatic marine biodiversity. But we did previously this exercise. It was a paper in which we tried to identify if citizen science could be involved in other SDGs. And you can see in green are the ones that has been tested and proved that they are already contributing. In yellow, the ones that are potential, and in gray, the not aligned. The good thing is that at least there are some yellows everywhere, and our aim is to change this with greening that graphic in the future. One of the services that it comes from MINCA on iNaturalist as well is that you could participate without knowing or without expertise of knowing what you are reporting. You can take a picture and maybe you don't know which is that organism, and you upload the picture and you ask for help. You say, could you help me? And then there is the community that can suggest different identifications, and there is a kind of discussion, and finally there is a community identification. This can be improved, and I will explain you later on what we plan to do that. Another vision that we maybe differentiate from other type of I would say, citizen science approaches is that in many cases people think citizen science between academia and society. That's all. And we think it's a little bit more complex. We have the participatory community, the people, the academic, but also we have mobilizing community and facilitating community. I will mention these examples, but you will see that it's very important in this large scale events organization. So the idea is creating such a kind, again, just going back, so you can see that our communities are constructed with 4 different types of community. So our idea is creating very local ones, all of them with this participation, academic, mobilizing, facilitating, and this creates many, many different living labs with local initiatives, local issues, but sometimes addressing large scale or global challenges, such as biodiversity loss or global warming or whatever you want. But we think that it's very important to organize this at the local level. Also, well, just to tell you that we also think that the way that the citizen observatory needs to speak with the people and the academic or the decision makers are very different. And that's why we created that model. It's part of the theoretical engagement, how to engage, just to emphasize that there is a need sometimes to speak different languages, one for the people and one for the academics. And also, it's important because we always think that this local organization needs to be done in local languages. So that's why we are promoting the translation of Minca in as many languages as possible. Now I think there are like 16 or something like that, but yesterday we were commenting that if you are interested on promoting this idea of local activity, this should be translated in Armenian to engage people in Armenian. That's more or less the idea, not only in Armenia, but anywhere else. And now let's go then to what it was the topic of today, these large participatory events. We mentioned this idea, we changed. I don't know if you are familiar with BioBlitz. BioBlitz is something that you try to record as many species as possible, but in a very short period of time, 2, 3, 4 days. So it's a kind of, fast race, if you want. But in the marine domains, this is very complicated to do it, because organizing a BioBlitz, it takes a while. So engaging all the community to go there and so on, it takes a lot of effort. Anything, because people cannot go even, for diving or for snorkeling. And that's why we decided to expand it and to make it biomarathons. It's a long race, if you want. And we started with the marine domain, but now there are more people that are saying that the same happen in terrestrial domain. It seems much efficient to put all the effort not only on 2 or 3 days, because also it could rain a lot on those days and maybe people will not go. So imagine we're trying now to offer this kind of, I would say, event during the whole summer period. That means not all the time people, but then local organizers, they could start and if something happened one day because it's raining, it rains or something, okay, you can postpone it and nothing happened. If it goes, we are now considering 4 or 5 months of period, but this can be adapted depending on whatever you may need. Again, the 4 pillars that I mentioned. So obviously there was the participatory community, the people, the academic, in our case it was ours, offering not only Minca, but also part of there are always data curators that help on identifying, which is also a very important issue, at least to have some expertise on those organisms that you observe. As mobilizing communities, well, there could be many of them, but in many cases was SMEs, for example, offering snorkeling guided tours or diving clubs or things like that, that are the ones, that put in contact people and guide them if they need, for example, masks or cameras or, I don't know, diving suits or whatever. And the facilitating committee usually are the city councils. City councils or local organizations that, for example, help in offering one place for discussion or for celebrating meetings within the local organizers. This, for example, the first biomarathon, it was in 2021. We were relatively proud of getting 10,000 observations at that time. But you can see the evolution. It's exponentially growing. We hope that this will go up and up. Now we are more or less per year, we are collecting 100,000 observations, more or less, in our Catalan coast. It's more or less 300 kilometers. But we're involving about less than 2,000 people. And just keep in mind that only in Barcelona area, there are 10 million visitors every summer. So imagine if we could engage just 10% of those, or even 1%, we will get a lot more data. So I think there is a space to grow and grow significantly to those records. But obviously this part was during COVID, and in COVID it was everything was very difficult. But after this 2021, you can see that step by step, and not only in summer, you can see here that there is also a kind of retention people that after the biomarathon, they feel very happy and they're willing to participate, and also they participate during winter, which I think is very good. So biomarathon is just a way to trap or a way to start engaging people, but sometimes part of these people are long-term engaged, which is the best thing, because then you can maintain a community that are moving all the time. And you can see also the evolution. And in our case, 5 months. But you can see also, this is the Catalonian coast, and that square is 10 by 10 kilometers. So you can see that it was in 2021. Obviously, there were several hotspots. The middle one is Barcelona. Barcelona is the most, where there are more, I don't know, probably 1/3 of the population is there. So obviously, always will be a hotspot. But you can see the evolution and now, well, I don't have data for this year, but at least we have at least few observations for every single one. So we are covering the whole coastline now with several people. And you can see, for example, in 2023, we were very proud that we reached these 100,000 observations, and you can see that at the beginning of this month, we reached 400,000. So you can see the number it's increasing a lot, and this creates not only and more. You can see 3,600 different species, and that's when you can establish, or when you can start, thinking on terms of which are the occurrences of those species, and you can try to relate pattern trends and so on. It's cumulative, yeah. But I think that I would be disappointed if in 10 years we cannot reach less than 1 or 2 million per year, because we have involved less than 2,000 people, and 2,000 people is nothing. We probably will have 20 million visitors all along the coast, so imagine if we could engage more people. But what is important for us is the creation of these local communities. And I give you here one example. It's in south of Barcelona, and this square, it is a natural reserve, and it was promoted by some people, local people. They push a lot, they say that it was really interested, and finally they convinced the government to create a natural reserve. But it was 25 years ago, so it was a bottom-up action, but obviously now they are very much interested on reporting and monitoring that marine reserve. So they created that particular project, not only on the marine reserve, but around the marine reserve, and now these people, Oceanicos, it's a diving club. Are the diving club that they want to promote, and they want to do things, and they are convinced also the city council on that area, but also the people and so on. And this is a kind of strategy that we think is the most efficient. If you convince local people to create their own projects, and then they keep on going in the momentum, that's the best. I put you example but here there are many other projects. You can see all over the coast. So the idea is trying to convince them, the local ones, as a kind of ambassadors. They are the organizers, and then it's when it works very well. Because obviously from Barcelona, we cannot be all the time, interacting with people from the north, from the south. It's not possible for us. We can guide them, we can help them, we can support them in terms of data validation, if there are some doubts in identifying species and so on. Obviously, we can do that. But the day by day, going, hey guys, today is a good day for snorkeling. Let's go. These kind of things needs to be at the local level, the very local level. Well, just to tell you that every time that we have reported new species on the area, and you can see here, for example, we identified 24 different exotic species. So the idea was to demonstrate that it was very useful, and in some cases, some of these potential alien species can be detected at the very early stage. Other cases, for example, the European parrotfish. This is very common, I would say, in the area of Eastern Mediterranean. And now, last year we spotted 1. This year we spotted 10. So it seems that because the temperature of the water is increasing significantly, and probably we are identifying these early, settles. So imagine, but this is from the very beginning, and this is very important because you can track all the process of where it was established, how it has been spread all over the coast, and this kind of understanding is very difficult or nearly impossible to do without people collaboration. And this is the kind of I guess, is the most important source of information in terms of ecology. We can address few processes that it's impossible, to monitor or to study, I would say, with conventional science. We cannot be everywhere, because you never know where there will be these new species. Well, this is a fire worm. The fireworm is typical from Canary Islands or also in the Eastern Mediterranean, and we spotted once last year, and I'm not sure if this year has been. So maybe it was once, and then it disappeared, and then you see again 5 years later or 20 years later, but these are the kind of things. Next steps. Well, just to tell you that we are now interested because obviously we are collecting such amount of data for many species. We have thousands of pictures, and that means that we can train automatic artificial intelligence systems. We can use this as a training sets, and it's our idea. We have that the idea, is creating the same service, but with what we call hybrid intelligence. We put agents, artificial agents in between, that they can also participate in such a kind of discussion. We have tested already with PlanNet. PlanNet is a platform that is quite mature. It has been for a long time, and they have very, I would say, quite good level of success of automatic identification of plants. So we have integrated PlanNet in Minka. So now whenever you upload pictures, you can click on, you can see here. If you click, then the system proposes you, it calls PlanNet, and then there is suggestions. Usually there are 10% of confidence, and you can choose in between which is the one that you want to choose. With this, and I put you an example. Imagine I took that picture. I test the automatic identification. It was labeled with this symbol. That means that I use it artificial intelligence, but that on top of that, someone else said, I agree with you. Well, I agree with the AI. So you can see that in between there is interaction between the agent and the people. And this is the kind of things. And in the future, here we want to have a list of different possibilities. Imagine we can train something for fish, or there could be, I don't know, fungi, any other type of taxons. So the more AI systems, that more agents, but specifically addressed for the specific taxons, you can choose in between which will be the one you want to use. And finally, we created this web. And in this web, basically, we try to promote the idea of having biomarathons around the world, and particularly Europe. So the idea is that here there will be all the information now. You can see that at least there is Portugal and Spain, the north in our area, but also the Portuguese, and maybe in the future they could allocate many others. The idea is that there will be space for the coordinators with their own local languages. For example, obviously Portugal is in Portuguese, but the new ones will be in whichever language the coordinators they want to choose. But we will try to coordinate such a kind of large events or facilitate people that want to participate on such a kind of approaches in the future. And basically was this, the introduction of this.
Thank you, Jaume. We can open now the floor for questions.
There is one.
Thank you for your thank you for your interesting presentation. I want to ask how can universities can collaborate in this project. I'm from Manau.
Yeah, thank you. Now, basically, you can collaborate creating your own project. We recommend all the time that you know, in that type of platform, you can create your own project. And you can decide, for example, the extension, you want to do something maybe biodiversity around AUA, it could be one project, or you are interested in on butterflies, or you are interested on, I don't know, in flowers. And I think that the best to do, obviously you can start just creating your own account and just watching how it goes. But at the end you can create your own project, and then you can decide whatever you want to do.
I'm already using a naturalist GBIF-based and PlantNet, and I want to ask how we can, with our students, participate in your project.
Yeah, imagine that you want to create. Now we are thinking on also, because we were involved in ProBlue, and not only for, I would say, for university students it's not a problem, because all of them are adults and there is no problem. So you can create your own project. In some cases you want to make it a kind of closed project, in which you want just to invite people. Imagine that you want to do it within your class or without your topic, and you are teaching, I don't know, lichens, and you want to do something about lichens. And you invite, and then it's a closed project, because sometimes it's interesting for you. You want to know later on who was being involved and reporting on validating and so on. So you can create a project that can be also use it as a kind of a project within your subject or your topic you are addressing. In other cases, you just want to participate as in the biomarathon, and you just say, guys, there is the biomarathon, and we would like also to participate. There are also an international BioBlitz. It's called City Nature Challenge, and in this one, for example, Yerevan could participate as a city, and then you can engage your students, and maybe later on you want to know how many of them has been involved, how many of them have made the effort on validating their own observations on how they evolve. One of the things that I think is really interesting, both for iNaturalist and Minkes, you can learn a lot, learning by doing. So you upload first the first pictures, you don't know anything, the people give you some clues, but later on, then you start seeing, this flower is that one. You can also, if you have used iNaturalist, you know how it goes. There can be a chat, so you can, how do you know that it's this flower and not the other? No, because you can see the color or whatever, detail or feature. So it's up to you. I mean, it's a lot of freedom. There is no strict rules, so you can design whatever you want. The only thing is that if you need support, what we can provide you is we can provide you in terms of guidance or recommendations, or lessons learned from the past. Also, we want to create. I think that the academic community could play a very important role on this process, and probably later on there could be interesting sharing ideas among different universities or different project that has been, and see how it went.
Maybe one thing to add on that, what we were discussing yesterday, Jaume's team is also now creating dashboards for these projects. So if we decide, for instance, as an example, we want to have a big marathon or blitz in Armenia, and we want to make it a competition between different universities or schools, then having that dashboard where people could see who's leading and how many observations you have till this point and so on would be a nice interactive way. That's one idea. Yeah, if you can. Another thing which I think us universities can do particularly in Armenia, is that a lot of these data sets, including the AI maybe, and the expert communities on these applications, iNaturalist, Minka, and so on, they are very much based on Western plants, Western species, and it might or might not be relevant for Armenia, at least not all of them, because we have different species here as well. So what we could do is maybe if we engage the experts in the community and we also start developing the Armenian expert communities to guide through identification, that would be a very significant improvement to or maybe also less bottleneck for engaging our students, our youth, our citizens into these types of actions.
Sorry. Because I don't remember the URL, I need to go like this. I think it's fine. Oh, thank you. I think it's... I think it's the one. Okay, sorry, because it's local language, so it's Catalan, but nevertheless, you can see this was in the City Nature Challenge in the 2024, and you can see, for example, the number of observations, and you can see here, for example, there is observations per day, how many species per day. This was just 4 days, so. But imagine in a biomarathon, this could be much longer. But because of that, and you can see, for example, here, which were the municipalities involved. Well, and you can see here all the municipalities involved, who were the participants. You can see, for example, in terms of species, it takes a while, but you can see this. It's a dynamic, oops, sorry. Yeah, so, oops. You can go maybe, I don't know, these are passivity formats. You can go, you know, it's a dynamic system that you can go, for example, how many, this is the blackbirds and blackbird family and so on, and you can go like this. Again, you can explore all the species, and for example here there is the invasive species. There is a list of invasive species that has been reported, and so well, it's just an example, but we can adapt this dashboard according to all the needs that you may require. You know, there are some people.
Does it also produce a map?
Yeah, there is some heat maps. Let me check. I think it is with municipalities. You can see. So you can see the different contributions in that particular case. It was mostly Barcelona. There were not many in that particular because we had again. It was 4 days really bad weather. It was raining a lot, so almost no one was participating in that one because it was only 4 days. But you can see at the end all the details. But this can be, you know, adapted to any kind of yeah.
Let me just ask one question.
Jeremy, one of the questions that we had when we're thinking of doing a big biomarathon in Yerevan ahead of COP17, the focus of it. So when you do this biomarathons, do you say just go see anything you see, send it to us? Or do you say look at what you think is invasive, look at what, do you curate the process? Or how do you think about that? Because if someone, that massive data comes in, okay, it's good to build that database, but is that the aim? Or is it could be more focused and so?
think that for the people, it's better the easiest, the better. I mean, imagine if you focus on invasive species. People try to report invasive. First, they need to be trained because sometimes they don't know if these species are invasive or not. And it's something that it can disappoint several people, no? I put a lot of effort, I try to follow the ones you ask me. So in general, what we do is allow them to report wherever they want. And later on, obviously, we have our own interest, and that means that we will filter part of which taxons or whatever, and also. But I think it's a second stage. So we think that it's better to allow people to report as many as possible in many cases, because even for them, in some cases, they learn basic things. You know, they are reporting basic species that for you are not, I would say, very interesting from the academic point of view or from the research point of view, but for them it's just a discovery. And they start learning, just learning. And they are very proud that at the end of this process of biomarathon, imagine that you are focused on trees, they were able to distinguish 5 trees at the beginning, and they end up with 15 different trees. For them, that's, again, a feedback, a return, and they are really happy on that. And maybe for you, with all this process, maybe you are focused on particular trees because that tree is invasive and you want to know where it's distributed. But that's the second stage. But this can be done later on, you know, with many, I would say, data scientists.
If I could just
Translated. So one thing that, for instance, you say citizens go capture anything you think is living. It's that general, the campaign. So it could be a bird, a tree, a worm, and it's whatever it is. Yeah. So they capture that, gets uploaded into the database, gets verified, and then the researcher uses however they want the data.
Yeah, in general, it's like this. It's true that this is I would say mid-term, even long-term. We have identified that within the citizen science communities, the ones that have been participating for a while, then are more curious of, oh, I never saw that one. And then you can, also some, I would say, mature communities, they want new challenges. And when you propose, okay, now that you have already discovered more or less, why do you don't have it your own track? And please go usually take that track and then they report in the particular. So we can move, I would say, from unstructured citizen science to a little bit more structured citizen science that for us sometimes is a little bit more informative. But this is very good when you have lots of I would say, local communities already well established, and then you can have a kind of challenge like this, no? Well, rather than just explore, let's put 1 hour of your effort on doing that trail that it's only 1 kilometer, and then try to report as many as possible. And now you already know many of those species. I imagine that butterflies, okay, and then you propose them a kind of protocol to report butterflies or to report whatever you want. But I think that at the very beginning, just in the discovery process, it's good to leave freedom to the people, and also for them many people enjoy a lot. Many divers, they told me, Jama, at the beginning, okay, something red, something green, something yellow, and now I can put many names on that. For us, it's good as a kind of awareness to say the biodiversity as well. So at the first stage, in evolved stage, you can think about going more specific questions. So even some people are happy to contribute then in a more sophisticated or more elaborated processes.
Coming to this as a social scientist, are you aware of any social science studies of the experiences and outcomes from participating?
Yeah, that is, yesterday I put one example. It said that psychologically, bird watching or nature watching, it's good for the people. It's part of this. Another is we can move also in terms of governance, digital rights, and many things that also are very important at the end. For us, it's very important that people feel that are part of the team. That means that all these acknowledgement processes are not now well designed. So, for example, now the way it goes, well, usually it's from the volunteers people, it goes to these citizen observatories, and then it goes to these data aggregators, such as GBIF. Then usually the academics usually goes to GBIF and collects the data from there, and in some cases GBIF acknowledge the citizens observatories, but we say, but what about the participants? And in many cases this flow back, or this information is not well done, and many people, for example, feel disappointed at the end, say, oh guys, yeah, I've seen a map, and in that map I'm pretty sure that this data comes from us, but where is our name? Where is our knowledge? And this is for us very important. And we mentioned, and it's a technical thing if you want that, but it's doable. When I always write a paper, I do not care about I receive somewhere that someone is citing my paper, and there is, you know, a place, a database in which I have a citation index because how many people has read my paper, and I was not following that. The same could be done, you know, with the data citation. So imagine, and this could be very good for NGOs, because maybe some NGOs, those local people put a lot of effort on reporting in those local areas. And these are kind of things that we have also within the team, people that address this part that is more related to social component.
Maybe a quick question for me, and then we can maybe do a roundtable introduction. Everybody could introduce themselves and ideas they have. When you, for the previous question, when you said it's better to open as a first step at least to everyone, they can observe anything they want. How would you address the challenge of then the expert community? Because if you're focusing on trees, it's easier to bring 2-3 botanists to validate the results and so on. But if you're opening it to trees, birds, macroinvertebrates, I don't know, insects, everything, how do you bring in all the necessary expertise around that?
That's one of the main challenges. And this is only when it's created there is a large community. It's true that, for example, in the case of iNaturalist, now the community is so large that you can address this because there are experts from every single taxon. In our case, it's a little bit risky, honestly. That we are now focused on the coastal domain because we have experts that will address that. If we open to terrestrial, it's doable, but there will be the challenge to try to engage them, at least some people, experts on botany, experts on entomology, and so on. There could be some cases in which we will not reach at the species level. But even, for example, in plants, in many cases, I'm pretty confident to reach maybe down to family level. So in several cases, maybe we stop there, but later on it can be reviewed by botanists and so on, and it's something also that we need to transmit to the people, that sometimes your first classification is very general, maybe family level, and then goes to genus, and then there will be an expert that goes down to the species level, and it can take a while. It's true that it's a little bit challenging, and also it's important to be sure that the people know the situation, or the best is if there are several, I would say, different universities, you can also have, okay, there is the competition on who is reporting more, but also who validates more, which is also another type of competition. And those people that are experts sometimes say, guys, I was able to validate whichever. And again, it's important the knowledge on that. If someone who has the expertise has been spent several hours on validating that, it should be some channels or methods at least to certificate that effort. And maybe imagine a postdoc, he has a lot of experience in particular taxonomic groups, and he spent part of his or her time doing that. Why not providing him or her a certificate, and maybe for a promotion or whatever, it can be done at the individual level, but also at the institutional level. Imagine that some departments say, we are very good on that taxonomic group, or at institutional level. It's validating 50% of the data within Armenia, or something like that. And these are an extra thing that it could be good for the institution.
TCP buyout. Yeah. This is, the question of data citation and who gets credit for the information. in the CS1, Mach CS1, CS Mach 1, and or the other projects you have, are you trying to systematize, standardize this process and recommend maybe development of standards by the EU? If you're going to use this data, this is how you're going to cite it.
Yes, it's one of, particularly in CS Mach 1, we mentioned this. It was one of the tasks, how to, is what is called data provenance. You have to track who was involved in the process of acquiring the data, validating the data, curating, and so on. And this is good first for the acknowledgement, but also for data quality. Because if you can track who was involved, imagine that you know that this person is really expert on validating this taxonomic group. If he or she was involved in the process of validation, you have high guarantees that that is a good validation. And this can be used also to filter out, for example, I just want, the top validated. I know that all these people are very good ones. Okay, give me only those data that has been validated by these people, because I trust a lot on that. And the others, okay, let's put in a second layer or something like that. So it's for quality assurance, but also for the acknowledgement process.
I'm Alan Omerkainen, I'm the director of the AUA Alcopian Center for the Environment.
Jaume, if we go back to the first year of your observations, I want to ask how well established the citizen science was in Barcelona or around the coast that you were doing your measurements, and also on the first year, what was the percentage of your institute's involvement and the SME's involvement that you were mentioning, and if you could track how it changed over time?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, that's very interesting. It's part of our research now. We are now to understand or to measure which is the impact, for example, for the diving clubs involved on that, which is, the return on that. Do they get more clients because they are involved in such a kind of process? We are in the process of record all these kind of things, but I think it could be, one of the outcomes in terms of economical impact on that. So the SMEs at the end, they got better and improved their, the number of clients and so on. It took a while. It's true that in Catalonia there is a long tradition on this type of participatory. I have to tell you that I've been involved in the past as a citizen scientist, and my first volunteer atlas or whatever, it was in 1984. So, and it was plenty of people. It has been rained a lot since then. But that is normal, particularly for birds and for butterflies. For the marine domain, it was really challenging because there was very little, much less than if you compare with birds or butterflies or things like that. But we are creating step by step a community. And it takes a while. You can see that it took for us 4 or 5 years. Now we're starting having such a kind of feeling of community. And also it's true that there are many, I would say, individual or local initiatives. There are now many people connecting with WhatsApp groups and things like that. Hey guys, next week I will go there. Who wants to come? And this kind of, I would say, local networks is really, really very important. And this will, create I would say it's a kind of culture, literacy if you want. You start maybe in some schools, then you find some schools that are very motivated, or several universities that are also very motivated as well. It depends also on the SMEs. I cannot give you the good recipe. We will try to collect this type of experience in that web, in the biomarathon, and we will try to promote lessons learned, suggestion, guidelines to speed up to those. I cannot, if you want, I invite you to follow us in the process of getting all these results. It's part of the research of several people now. Yeah, anytime. Also, even some of these SMEs are creating their own projects, and they are the coordinators of those projects. So imagine a diving club that goes usually to a certain area. They say, okay, biodiversity there, and they put the logo because you can choose the banner, you can choose that one, and you can see that there were plenty of, maybe I should check, but there is, in one of the projects, it's plenty of logos because they decided to put all the logos. And it's important, yeah, because it's a way, you know, to give them visibility, and, yeah.
So a hiking club could, or a tour operator could offer this as a product for their engagement of their tourists.
Yeah. We have done this with snorkeling tours. And in fact, we started, yesterday I mentioned, there was a couple of girls, you know, very enthusiastic, and they say, we want to offer snorkeling tours in Barcelona. And at the beginning, people say, you're crazy, you will not find anything in Barcelona. But we help them, you know, on identifying the species. And well, yesterday we spent that, but it was really successful. And now many people know them, and it's a kind of reference in Barcelona. So whoever wants to do snorkeling in Barcelona, usually they try to go with them because they are now well known in Barcelona, one of the most important SMEs offering this type of activities in the city.
I'm Molly Freeman, and I teach critical thinking for the digital era.
Hello, thank you for the talk. My name is Shayan. I'm a cycling biologist who just arrived in Yerevan. I don't live here. But I've been part of biodiversity and citizen science and ecology projects in Norway. Yeah. Biologist with a bicycle. It's quite easy.
My name is Lucy. I'm from the United States, but I'm volunteering here at the Kopian Center under Gadabet Kazanjian. And I studied marine science, so I'm really interested in how you're using the citizen science with it. But yeah, thanks.
My name is Armin Agakian. I just moved from the United States as well, and I'm a geologist. I've been involved in more environmental soil and groundwater cleanup projects.
I'm Armine from Anau. My research is read book plant mapping.
I'm Hüsnet Hadavosyan. I'm from Akopian Center for the Environment. I'm teaching sustainable food systems here.
My name is Gayane Boisu. I'm working with the Akopian Center on biodiversity projects and also on the road to COP17. So definitely interested in how we can practically set this up and what kind of special considerations there need to be for this large scale to ensure data quality, to ensure the data is then used for practical purposes, so like the more technical aspects of it for COP17.
Ես Նարնե Կարապետյան եմ, Գեղարքունիքի մարզի Վարդենի գյուղի հիմնական դպրոցի քիմիա եւ կենսաբանության ուսուցչուհի, ինքս սիրում եմ ստեղծագործարարությունները երեխաների մեծ զարգացնել, իրենց ավելի մոտեցնել բնությանը, բնաճանաչողական արշավներ եմ կազմակերպում, նաեւ հեքիաթագիր եմ.
Maybe we can give you this really quickly. Did I want
Narne Karapetyan.
Narne Karapetyan is from a region in Armenia, from Vartenik village. Is a teacher of chemistry and biology and is often organizing with her students hiking and various tours to make the students very interested in nature and biology and everything else related.
Hi, my name is Aida Papikyan. I work at the Akopian Center for the Environment. I studied biodiversity-related subjects. Now in the projects I'm involved in water-related projects.
Hello, I'm Marcin Gasparian, assistant professor and biodiversity expert at the Akopian Center for the Environment. And I would like to open also discussion regarding why mink are not iNaturalists, because you mentioned this during your presentation, but it would be also interesting to listen, because we have more, let's say, established community in iNaturalists, I mean Armenian community more or less. So that would be good to listen about pros and cons.
Can I sorry, two questions. You did a BioBlitz in seventh grade. And also, you're seven. So the second thing that you're also involved in eDNA work. There's some citizen science. So if you could comment on that also.
Thank you.
My name is Samuel. I'm a biologist. I'm also MBA, and I'm a president and chief business officer of Eco Vitality startup. With the main goal is to build a recycling plant in Armenia, even some recycling plant in Armenia. That's all.
Yeah, Alan. So we have a cooperation with Berlin Botanical Garden. And so I did my PhD there, so it's a long-lasting cooperation on lichens and fungi. And together with our colleagues, we have implemented the field part of our research that we are going to continue with. And right now we're doing, one of our AUA students was involved in this process of lab research. The idea was, okay, regarding butterflies and birds, it's more or less easy. So you can observe them, it's comparatively easy, but regarding especially fungi, we have a lot of cryptic species, dark taxa. We have, I mean, they quickly disappear because of different environmental conditions. It could be a bit more humidity, less humidity. You most probably will miss, let's say, majority of fruiting bodies. So only, and especially in countries like Armenia, where you don't have so many specialists, maybe in each direction you have 1, 2, 3, okay, 5 people involved, even in the ornithology. So the idea was how we can incorporate the eDNA, citizen science and expert-based identification together to improve quality of monitoring in countries like Armenia, let's say developing with less opportunities for, because we cannot, let's say, invite people from Berlin and other places every year and go with them to all protected areas or to other important sites for biodiversity and work with them there. So it's very expensive. But we can engage, let's say, amateurs, like biology students, and not only, and also request support of the experts to verify some identifications. Maybe with, with images, it's really hard to do that because it's not so easy, especially in case of lichens and fungi, because you need, in a lot of cases, you need, let's say, some lab research, some tests, some sports observations, and so on. So, but we think that eDNA could be a significant and important tool and can have a significant contribution and improve, let's say, quality of data observation. For instance, we tested this in Dilijan National Park. We established plots which were observed by amateur students and experts, and we also collected eDNA samples from the ground for especially mycorrhiza fungi, not only, plus we have also collected the samples from the bark of the tree, and the idea was that we will, let's say, study and compare the expert observations versus, let's say, amateurs plus eDNA to see the differences in biodiversity of fungi and lichens, and also number of observations and so on. Right now we're on the stage of, let's say, lab research. We're going to send our samples to Macro again for eDNA metabarcoding, and so this was the idea of this study. So it's well known for especially for fungi and lichens, that it could be very useful to adding eDNA. It's not so expensive, and it's going to be cheaper and cheaper because it's now now it's more and more applied by scientists. And I think it could be a good tool, complementary. Of course, we cannot just say exclude, and it's always wrong understanding of things that you think that if you're expert and you have, I don't know, citizen science, eDNA, and other tools, they're going to, kick you out from the field. No, it's not true, because you need to do a lot of other researches, and it's not just basic identification. And for instance, phylogenetic studies, some more complex ecosystem studies, and so on. So it's not about that, but with such methodologies, we can provide an opportunity for countries like Armenia to establish more, let's say, cheap and also affordable monitoring system. And you can do this with your own resources. You don't need to engage, I don't know, foreign scientists and pay them money. Yeah, that's what. 7?
In an hour, you've been 200 species, 250 species.
It was during the 7th Startup Summit. So we organized very quick, let's say, BioBlitz. You can call it BioBlitz. So, and it was in this 7th festival city. They call it the space of the is a beachfront area, and the idea was to just simply all participants go there and they collect all possible organisms, as you mentioned. And we observed, I don't remember the exact number of observations, but it was quite high, and maybe...
Students, but you had experts who were
No, we didn't have actually we had 2 students from, not 2 students, maybe young researchers from the Institute of Zoology. They had the highest number of observations there, because of course it's a bit different, but I mean, top 3, 2 of them were from Institute of Zoology, and the third one was just volunteered there. So it's not only about, let's say, professional observer, because of course it's completely different. When you're professional in the field, you see the species, and if you're amateur, if you're volunteer, maybe you can't observe them. They are so small, and you need some, let's say, if you can say something good eye, to see them. So of course it's a bit different, but it was very nice, let's say, exercise and experience. And it was again gamified a bit, because it was a type of competition, and I think it was good because they had just a short period of time, like 40 minutes. It was like very nice, and they're looking for different tools. And it's not something, I mean, it's not so valuable ecosystem. It's artificial pine forests there. Of course, we have some other species there, but I mean, I can imagine, for instance, we did the same, and we talked about this yesterday on the trail of Hidden Waterfall Trail on Dilija National Park. So we had the students there, we observed, and they stated what we are going to publish. It was really nice to see that. Of course, you can pay to experts to come, but if you're, for instance, you're hiking trail building organization, and you don't have funds for biodiversity studies, this is an option, and we will get some information about the trail, and you can use this for educational purposes, you can use for different purposes, for further monitoring, maybe impact of ecotourism, and restricting the number of tourist visitors in the area if it has much, let's say, more negative impact rather than positive. So it could be useful data for decision makers, and not only.
The problem there is that there's a conflict of interest, because if you show negative impact of visitors, then the tour company, the guide, will not be interested to show those results, because that will negatively impact his work. If they're doing it, they're running it.
They are not running. That's the main point. University is running, because the idea was to engage biology students there, and you can do this because, for instance, I'm teaching biology and ecosystems and biodiversity conservation here. So every year we can engage the same number of students, let's say 15 or 20 students, and do the same, and to observe the differences, and we will share with all of them, because we are not in this conflict of interests. We we can share with hiking organizations, with the leadership of the Division National Park and the other stakeholders there, because it should be public. Of course, except maybe red listed species, which is important to keep in mind when we are talking. This is another question of discussion, because mostly amateurs, they don't know the differences, and they can observe, for instance, species. And this is very, let's say, important discussion, at least in our Armenian scientific community. Should we keep the data about red listed species confidential and more for scientific and decision making about this, rather than posting this online? It's not only about the iNaturalist or Minka or the other sources, but also in general, doing the publishing paper or something else. For instance, I don't provide any exact coordinates for species. For instance, we recently published a paper about a new species of tuber, truffle, in Armenia. It's endemic for region. It's the only location. I know that truffle has some economic importance, and people are collecting in diligent, so it can create a threat for this species. So it's also an interesting topic for discussion, if you can a bit elaborate on this.
Well, too many things. Well, first, the question of geolocation. As in iNaturalist, you can choose in some cases between make the geolocation public, FTSE, that means around the area, or private, no information at all. We think that we can find maybe in between. So imagine that, for me, by default, in many cases, if I want to help on identifying, I don't need exactly the precise value. If they give me, if it's in 10 by 10 kilometers square, that's enough, or maybe even 25 by 25. And with this, for example, for me, it was a suggestion. We are discussing a little bit how to do it, but we were thinking on by default for public, always 10 by 10. Only on those cases that you really need to go down to a very detailed, you can ask for permission, or even you can create a project and you say, within the team, they know exactly where is the place. But outside my team, I mean my group, it's 10 by 10 or 25 by 25, for example.
But while you're drinking, so you as the Minka owner, quote unquote, that get all the data, do you know where it is, or it's again up to the researcher?
Usually, as our coordinators, we have such kind of information because it's in the database. But we try not to make it public. Also, we were discussing when we uploaded in GBIF, should we provide exactly the location, or should provide only UTM reference, for example. It's something that even within GBIF, it has been discussed a lot, how it should be done. Yeah, it's an open question. Also, there is a market, a very important market on amphibians, rare birds, and so on. So many of those people are now watching in these databases because they know where they can find this rare frog that in the market it can be, sold by a huge amount of money. So it's a little bit dangerous of this type of, this type of information. Yeah, it's an open question. I do not provide, I cannot give you the right answer, but it's something that we should address. Again, iNaturalist versus Minka. Obviously, iNaturalist has a long history, nearly 20 years now, and huge community. Our concern, first, we are developing the observatory itself. So we are interested on, for example, in these questions, if we find a different way to report the location, if we find a different way to acknowledge people, those kind of things, we should have the capacity to transform the observatory. And it's not the case. So if you are just a user, iNaturalist could be quite good. The second concern for us is not, and because it's US based, and all the data has to be, it's not GDPR compliant. You need to, there is one, you have, whenever you open or you create an account, you need to mark that you know that it's not GDPR compliant and you accept that it will not be GDPR compliant. In many cases, it could not happen anything, but it could happen that one day the European Commission says, guys, those platforms are not GDPR compliant, are not eligible. You cannot propose a project in which you are using a non-GDPR compliant project, which is very risky because creating the community, it's really, really, time consuming. So create a community in a platform and later on the Commission says, you cannot use this in European projects, at least in our case, we are basically funded by European projects. And this is something that, it was important for us. And also in the context of digital rights and so on, the fact that now it's, Minka, it's owned by a private institution and supported by a foundation, but also supported by Google, Amazon, Microsoft. So basically it's private supported platform, research infrastructure. We think that in terms of data rights, data governance and many other things, it's much better to build something that is public funded. It's pan-European. Our idea in Minka, it's proposed that Minka will grow in a pan-European, I would say, scenario, in which there will be several countries involved in supporting them, and it will be 100% public. So it cannot happen as it happened, for example, with Twitter. With Twitter, it was a platform that has been used many times for many researchers for a very long time. Many people built things around Twitter, and then there was one person that he bought Twitter, but he decided to change the rules, and he changed completely. He changed the name, he put X, but also he changed the rights of the access of that. It was not open data anymore. In our case, because we are defining the concept of open science, for us, all the data, all the code, everything should be open. And also it's mandatory now in the European projects. And that's why we thought, okay, it's hard because you start a new, I would say, a new community, but with the guarantees that nobody will change you the rules in the middle, in 5-year time, or something like that. And that's the main reason why we decided to create Minka. It's I would say the public version, but also with many other new services, or we're adapting new services according these type of discussions, according geolocation, acknowledgement, things like that we want to change.
Just a quick question. For instance, I know my colleagues, they have a project again pan-European regarding the fungi, and they are using this Bluetooth. I don't know if you know Bluetooth.
Yeah, Bluetooth is for Lithuania, I guess.
Yeah, Estonia. Yeah, I mean, what about the other, let's say pan-European platforms?
Yeah.
Do you have any, let's say, discussion or conversation bringing all together? Because it's really tough when different projects are requesting different platforms. I mean, especially for instance, for scientists it's more or less okay, but I mean for general users, I mean public, it's not good to always request to download something and become part of the new community. So.
Well, the idea is that all this type of data will end up to global repositories. So at the end, all the data, the data flow, it's going to GBIF or Eurobis or many of those. So the idea is, I understand that there is a history behind those platforms. And again, if you go to Sweden, Portalen, it's one of the most important ones there. In Estonia, Bluetooth is probably the most well-known now. And you will not change the people behavior if they are feeling happy because they feel part of the community in Bluetooth. They will say, okay, but I will report in Bluetooth because it's the one that I've been using for many years. It's like, it happened with the social media as well. People that were in Facebook, when they offer Google Plus, I remember in the past, Google was offering Google Plus as, it will be the new one. But at the end, they didn't succeed, and they didn't succeed because people were happy on using Facebook. So at the end they gave up. So I think that the point is that, okay, let's try to converge all the data to these data aggregators. For me, the important is that then whenever some people use that data, the proper knowledge to the rest is what we are working now in CS Mag 1, and leave to the communities, and in several cases you will not change the people. The people are happy in using one platform, and it will be quite difficult, and you will have several of them. What we are also trying to do is that in some cases for scientists, imagine that I'm specialist in frog, I'm interested in frogs, and maybe I'm interested also, I'm willing to participate, and I don't really matter if that frog has been reported in Pluto, in Airport Talent, or whatever. So imagine that I can download the data, I can, why not? First, it will be interesting for me, because if I'm a specialist on frogs, which are the new records all over the Europe, if I'm working at the largest scale. But also, I can identify and then return back to the different platforms. So me as a specialist, I don't need to be attached to a single one, unless I want to create something behind just reporting.
I think it's less of a problem for specialists, because it's our job, and it depends on us going and finding the data. So we're more willing to invest time to go towards different repositories, pick the data, and so on. But it might be a hurdle for engaging citizens.
Yeah.
Because if Arsen, say, wants to engage some citizens and tells them, please download whatever, Plutov, and then Ida says, please download iNaturalist, and then I go say, please download Minka, they're like, okay, we're fed up.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it.
Yeah, and now they are coexisting, all these type of platforms. You know, there is Observado, Observation, Plutov, Minka, iSpot. If you go to the UK, iSpot is one of the most used ones. So and it's very difficult to address that. The only thing is that we are now trying, at least in Minka, for example, we have the idea of reporting not only biodiversity but other indicators. So maybe there are people that say, oh, but it's the only one that I can report water quality, for example, or air quality. And but it's true that it will be difficult, and we need to to live with this issue somehow.
Yeah, if you have a follow-up, then you can go, and then I'll go after you. Okay.
Maybe very quickly, there's also the element of, what we were talking about, gamification, becoming experts. So you get also, in terms of validating results, you have, higher tier expert level, if you want. And that kind of requires you to buy in one application, and you're more motivated to use that application if you already have a high status in it. Yeah. So if Arsen comes and tells me, no, God, let's switch now to the other one, I'm like, I don't want to start from scratch. Yeah. So all of these, on one hand, they're good ways to keep people within the, building the community that you were mentioning. But at the same time, this diversification of applications and platforms also is a hurdle against that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's true that the ideal case would be all working in a single one. But there is a historical record. People that has been for 20 years in Airport Talent, and they are happy with Airport Talent. They do not plan to change, because they have already all these connections, all this community. They are going out, and I remember one of the first in Spain is what's called Biodiversidad Virtual. It was people taking pictures. The platform itself, it was really, old-fashioned and very bad, but they were super happy, and they said, we will not change. Yes, my community, and it's very difficult to change this.
Maybe something to follow on what you've been talking about, the red list. I've been observing some plants in northern Iran. I'm trying to pinpoint the species, because there is a severe lack of, at least a national database registry for the species. And it's a strange thing when you observe this plant and it's very common around the world. Where you go to the databases and the map in Europe, it's very persistent observation. And then when you want to look at this part of the world, so okay, it's been observed twice in Turkey, once in Armenia, and it may be 3 times in Georgia. Is it in Iran? I'm not sure, because I don't know if it's not the same species. It's possible that it's in Iran. So it's not uniform in a way of access. So, but I'm used to working with the National Registry of Species in Norway. And it's something that works with also species from Sweden, because these countries are bordering each other. They have a lot of common species. And now in Norway, the system, how it works is that they have this registry, and it also reports on the red listed species and let's say alien species as well. And in connection to that, they have designed their own application that you can take pictures of plants, marine life, insects, birds, whatever. And it's connected to that registry, which is built on historical records, expert databases, and also collections of environmental DNA, metabarcoding, as well as museum specimen. So it has that kind of a base on a national level that they can connect to and work with. And of course it's connected to many institutions, and then now it's working with EU as well, for example. So I don't know if this is the case in Armenia. I'm new here, but I think having a local base of registry that you can have your own application could be also a nice starting point. And then you can collaborate with, for example, Minka and other things. Because I've been playing around with starting same thing in Iran, but again, that lack of collaboration and lack of a national thing is a big deal. But I wanted to follow with one question that I had regarding the disturbance to the environment. Obviously, if you're recruiting a lot of people to go out and have a look, in my mind, the biggest positive is bringing attention and people looking for details, people becoming more engaged in nature, which is a great thing. But obviously it comes with its side effects. Whether you're taking a picture, and some people might pick up a specimen to take a picture, they pick a flower, they to look at it in a better way. So how do you work with that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It's difficult. I don't have the good solution, particularly because we try to engage as many people as possible, and obviously some people will be really respectful, others will not be so much. It's a challenge. Also, that's why for us it's very important, this idea, to promote very, very much local people, because those local people, it's much better than trying to engage people from abroad, come here. No, let's do it locally. Obviously, it's good in natural parks and so on, but also you can create, and this is part of the management of the natural parks, but imagine that they create a kind of integral area in which only few visitors could be, and the surrounded area, and try to balance it between, again, also when there is a natural protected area, how many people should be allowed as a visitors. But these are kind of things, and also it's important, we try also to emphasize that the most important thing is the organism. So before taking a picture, if you plan to disturb them, forget that picture. We don't need, also we mentioned that we don't need a super detailed picture. We can do something that it's good enough at least to reach genius level. For example, collecting, we try to avoid as many as possible to engage people for collecting, because we don't have the control, and this can create a lot of disturbances. That's why we prefer to start working first with only pictures or sound or something like that. But it's true that it's a balance, that if at the end there are many people, and also that's also for sensitive species. I don't know, it's very typical whenever there are seahorses, for example, and people know that there are seahorses, they're crazy to go there to take the pictures of the seahorses. So let's, in those cases, in those, I would say, sensitive species, let's put 10 by 10 kilometers square. There are seahorses around there, no more than that. But also, I think it's part of, and that's why also if there are local people mobilizing, are the ones that are more conscious about the problem of, you know, this type of disturbance, and are the ones that can sometimes regulate that type of pressure as well.
I would like to say that citizen science observation should be augmented by AI monitoring, tech sensoring devices and so on, because you had in your one slide the information about AI, but it was predominantly unstructured data. So it should be everywhere, ubiquitously, because that's not enough for example, citizens to make observations and make photos and send, could be bad, with bad quality, could be unstructured and so on. What do you think about that? About using AI devices or monitoring sensory devices to augment all this structure, and they should work autonomously to make decisions and to make some results, for example, which should be good for for the project, Megaproject, for this Megaproject. What do you think?
What do you mean, AI for collecting as well? Well, it could be in the future. I don't think now it could be as efficient as the people. Also, I think that engaging the people in all this process, you are involving them sometimes in their ecological problem as well. So it's good for them to be there and to notice, for example, during several years that some species has disappeared, or others has been appeared, all these kind of dynamics. That social perception on that is very important. Otherwise, they are simple spectators, and we want to engage them in all the process. Also, we want also to engage them in deliberative process sometimes. So we are connecting platforms that are good for reporting, but also good for deliberation. Obviously, sometimes AI systems can help, but for us it will never be completely a substitute of humans. That's why we mentioned also this idea of hybrid intelligence. So why not interaction between, but putting humans in the loop all the time. For us it's important.
This may be too naive a question, but I'm curious, especially with the beach, how do you specify people stay within a particular location on the shoreline so that you're not getting reports of duplicate animals and birds flying?
Yeah, the question of duplication is very complicated. That's why in many cases it's very complicated whenever you want to estimate abundance. But in some cases you just want, first the species list. So no matter if they have it reported once or 10 times. So we start with very simple, I would say, indicators and move a little bit further. Because, for example, in the case of seahorses, obviously there is that species that there is just one, but 20 people reporting that particular seahorse. The advantage in that case using AI is that you can apply facial recognition in the seahorses, and because they have several characteristics particular for each one of them, so you can see that picture, and that picture are from the same animal. This is the kind of thing that AI could be very helpful. But yeah, it's true that it's part now of our research, how to translate these occurrences, considering the problem of bias, many bias in several species will be reported, others, as was mentioned, that people will even not be able, because they are not trained by eye, so at the beginning they are very biased to, I would say, colorful things, big things, more appealing things, easier to spot or to take pictures. But these are kind of things that it's part of our research, how to translate this in a meaningful information. But at the beginning, let's start just with occurrence. Is that a species in that area, yes or no? And then it's not so sensitive on this part of the duplicates.
Just also to highlight one point that our Norwegian, Swedish, Iranian cycle bicyclist mentioned, this bias, places where there are observers and there are places where they're not. So, of course, that implication is that you really cannot make global conclusions. You just, based on whatever you have, that's what you. So, what about that bias? What is the thinking around that bias? Other than, of course, pushing to expand citizen science.
Yeah. It's one of the subjects. Now there are one of my researchers, I mean PhD students, that works particularly on that, because we are now very much, well, we are putting a lot of effort now on understanding what's going on in the beaches of Barcelona, because it's only 5 kilometers and there are 10 beaches. And we have identified that in some of them, people are reporting more fishes than in the others. But we know that all in which there are more fishes, there are more observations as well. Why? Because our beaches are easier to park, access, facilities and so on. So our question is, in those that those species are not reported because they are not there, or because it's a lack of enough effort on that. And this is a type of correction that probably we need to model, we need to understand, and it's part of the bias. And I put always the example, the same happened with the remote sensing. At the beginning, people didn't know much about how atmosphere, aerosols and so on, but the more information they have, the better retrieval on the remote sensing images. The same will happen with citizen science. We have raw data. All the data that I reported here is raw data, and probably needs to be modeled and needs to be compensated or contextualized depending on the global effort and potential bias identifying these kind of things.
Thank you. That's very helpful. One other thing that always about citizen science, we don't necessarily mean crowdsourcing of information. We also could go to farmers, to fishermen, to kind of specialized trades, and they become citizen informants, right? So how do you work with those expert communities who have inherent interests in the results of some sort?
Well, they are part of these living labs. When I say mobilizing community or facilitating community, there could be local fishermen, or there could be, I don't know, and we try to connect all of them. So that's why we think that if we convince or we can achieve, this type of very local communities within that particular area, that's the most efficient thing in controlling all these kind of things. And sometimes, are the kids that convince the parent, and the parent are the fishermen, and then they realize that they can provide also some data as well, and things like that. But yeah, the idea is that to engage them or to involve them in these local communities, living labs.
There's an active hunting community, right? You're not connected.
Yeah, but they have hunters, they have a lot of knowledge. If you can convince them, sometimes, why you don't change your gun with a camera, and it's happening, for example, a lot in coastal areas. They were spearfishers, and they change to taking pictures.
It might be an interesting question to look at is, if you look with these expert groups, they also have their interest, which filters what they see, right? So I'm thinking we've done some work on wild plant harvest. And when they go to the field, they don't go with maybe the spirit of finding something new. They want to find what they need. And this may be a source of bias also in using these expert communities. So.
That's why trying to involve as many people as possible, somehow you compensate, because you have people very much interested on very particular taxons, and also within the community. You can find people that for example, in our case, there are people that are crazy about nudibranchs, because even there are tiny animals that are very colorful, and they spend a lot of effort on reporting those. Others, they report fishes. Others, why not? They report algae or spongy or whatever. We're trying to convince more and more because algae are good indicator, probably not at the very beginning, but then they realize, oh, but these are different, yeah, you know, so, for example, it's part of the game. Do you want to increase the number of your species, your own list? Now you have almost all your crustaceans, all the mollusks. Let's look for algae. Oh, why not? And some people,
Hopefully we'll introduce new species.
yeah, yeah.
Now, just as an example, it was, I would like to remember the name of the national park. It was national park in Germany. So as in Africa, they have Big Five. It was a marine protected area. They created Small Five, all the small mollusks and other small organisms. And you know, they had not hundreds, but maybe dozens or thousands visitors per year coming to observe those organisms, because they let's say created a marketing strategy based on the species. Just at the first look, they are not so attractive, seems to be, should not attract so many visitors. It was opportunity to see them, then they created this Small Five. Just want to remember the name of the national park. Wadensee, if I'm not mistaken. Wadensee, yeah. Sorry? No. It's in German, I will check right now, but it was...
But Wadensee it's all, because it's Friesland Islands, and it goes from Netherlands down up to, yeah, all Germany.
Germany, yeah.
And Wadensee.
It was really, let's say, a success story, which they
Yeah.
share that how they can attract, let's say.
Well, it's part of when I say local communities, imagine that if you find something that is very special and very appealing for people to visit you, and then this could make, you know, okay, people go there, but then probably in the particular case that they need to swim or dive, probably they will spend the weekend, and that means that they will rent or they will be in a hotel and they will go for dinner or what. So there could be some economical impact on that. So depending how you build this, it could be a very important local impact. And that's why you engage then the city council and or the local government to say, wow, are you telling me that if I take this like that, I can increase, you know, the return of the economic impact in and also for hiking people. Or you can offer a hike, but you can offer a hike. Or, no, but bring your smartphone, you take some pictures, and later on, if you uploaded this in that whichever platform, everything will be, you know, identified. I can comment you if it was common or not common, or it was. And some people are crazy being the first one on reporting that particular species. They're crazy. And they are people really very competitive. I remember once that it was at the beginning, and he was an entomologist, and he wanted to be, you know, the top one, every month. But then when botany started reporting, obviously with botany you can report much more than insects, and he realized that he was not, yeah, and he gave up. No, yeah. Well, there is a lot of you know, human science, yeah, social sciences, and in this, and understanding the behavior of the people or the willingness or the motivations. And obviously, society is diverse, and there are people that are very competitive. Others that no, I just want to learn, or I'm happy. And for example, you know, retired people that have a lot of knowledge and they put a lot of effort just on validating. So they do not have time on reporting, but they are very happy on helping people on validating species. And that's the hobby. More than welcome, because are very, very interesting people to be involved on the platform.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for being here. There are some coffee and snacks at the back if you want to stay a bit longer and chit chat. and have a nice rest of the week.